Hey everyone, just to let you know that we do have some sound issues at the first 30 minutes of this podcast episode. It does improve around the 35 minute mark, so please stick with it as it's an awesome episode with my guest Rebecca Edmonds. So apologies for that, we move. Hello and welcome to Fats on Film. I am your host Hannah Ogilvie, and this is a podcast where we discuss all things fat representation in film, TV and wider media. This week, my guest is anti-diet coach and content creator Rebecca Edmonds. Hello, Rebecca!
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, I'm so happy that you agreed to come on. I feel very honoured to have you. I was just saying before we hit record, listeners, that I have been following Recovery Rebecca for so long, and I'm just so excited to have you on the pod and all of your wisdom and knowledge that we can just like bask in.
It makes my heart so warm to hear that. The Recovery Rebecca is definitely like a project of love for sure. And it's given me the opportunity to connect with so many people, and it's been so amazing.
I love that. And so how did you get started on your channel?
So I originally started Recovery Rebecca was completely private. It was actually just a account I had with my therapist for my own like eating disorder recovery journey. So it was kind of like a way for her to keep not necessarily like keep tabs, but more so just for me to keep her updated on like kind of like how I was feeling, kind of like an open journal almost. And then once I started like getting more into intuitive eating and that kind of stuff, I was like, well, maybe I could actually like, create more content. And then I decided to make it a public account, and now it is what it is.
What an interesting like situation to like create an Instagram account just for you and your therapist, I guess, like to share, I can imagine maybe you like even shared memes that like resonated with you, like, oh, this is something I was thinking today, therapist. And
yes, literally.
What a unique experience. And like in the fact that that's now grown into something, I mean, to share my own story, like I found in my recovery, I felt so isolated, right? So I remember thinking like I was the only one who had the thoughts I thought. And then it does take, this is some of the greatness that social media brings. It you find accounts that actually resonate with you and you go, oh, I'm not on my own. And I know for my own goals with what I'm creating, and I believe your goals, just from what I've read of your work, is about building that community. It's building that idea that you're not on your own. You've got friends. You're not beyond saving.
Yeah, no, exactly. Because like eating disorders and diet culture are very, like you said, very isolating. Like that's just part of the deal, is that it wants to keep us like away from ourselves, not want people to see what we're eating or what our bodies look like or stuff like that. And building that kind of community where it feels okay to like be seen and take up space and to talk about like how you're struggling and like what you're struggling with is really important, and it honestly was a game changer for me in my own recovery. Yeah,
definitely. Well, I'm so honored to have you on the podcast, and again, like, listen, just want to hear your point of view on things. I think it's fascinating. I think it's well worth broadcasting and everyone listening to it, because we all need to like stand and fight against diet culture, because it is, I've said it before and I'll say it until I die, it is insidious.
Yep.
And we need to we need to wise up a bit with it. So I know through your work, you're doing that, and I do my little part with my fashion.
I actually, this is going to sound hopefully not as creepy as I think it's going to sound in my head, but I was looking through all of your like TikTok reels the other day, and I was like, I'm so obsessed. I love your hair, by the way.
Thank you. I mean, I have literally just got it cut. I don't know if you can see. I literally got it cut yesterday, and I've been saying, because I've dyed it so much that like, I don't know how many, maybe 5 inches or something I've cut off. It was just dead. It was fried, you know. And I was like, right, I'm getting married next year. I want to have long, luscious hair for the wedding. Let's just cut it off. But I am having like a bit of an identity crisis today, because I'm just like, oh my god, it's so short. It's so short. I've not had it this short in ages. But I don't know if you know the content creators Abby Bible and Heensey.
Yes.
I feel I'm giving very much those gals. I'm like part of the Bob community.
Yeah, and that's what like Honestly, I would give that too. Like, no, but I love the short hair. I think it's a look.
Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you. I actually needed that because I am scared. I'm scared of the reaction because I know people love the long hair. So, anyway, let's get off the hair. Let's talk about why we're here today, and that is to talk about the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, a 2005 American comedy drama film directed by Ken Kwapis. And Ken Kwapis, I know him because he directed quite a lot of the episodes of The Office US.
Oh.
So he's like a bit of a sitcom guy. He also I did read this. Oh, I think he did He's Just Not That Into You. So he's that kind of a guy.
Yeah.
From a screenplay by Delia Ephron, Nora Ephron's sister, and she also wrote You've Got Mail. So, if you like a rom-com, that's like a classic rom-com.
Yeah.
Based on the 2001 novel of the same name by Anna Brashares, and it stars America Ferrera, Amber Tamblyn, Blake Lively, and Alexis Bledel. It was released in the US on June 1st, 2005 by Warner Brothers Pictures, and there was a sequel. And Rebecca, I had no idea there was a sequel until I read that there was a sequel. And I was like, that missed me. Obviously, I aged out by this point, and I missed it. And that was released in August 2008. And there is a third film in development, and a musical adaptation is also in development based on the first film. And it made $42 million, which is probably on the lower end of the films we discuss in this podcast. But what I definitely didn't see this in cinema. Did you see this in the cinema?
No, I remember this definitely was something I was watching on like my little DVD player on my little TV. Yes.
Yeah, I agree. I remember really like renting this out, like going to it wasn't Blockbuster, but like your Blockbuster store, and renting it for the weekend. I definitely didn't go to the cinema, and I don't even remember like it being on the TV. I just rented it a lot.
Yeah, I don't remember it ever being on. I don't ever remember seeing it on TV, and I know I didn't see it in the cinema either. But yeah, it was definitely one of those. I'm pretty sure I just had like the DVD that I had gotten as a gift sometime, and I just kept watching. It was like just permanently in my DVD player.
Yeah. Oh my God, I want to get into that. But before we do that, Rebecca, can you let me and the listeners know what is the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants all about?
The four friends is Bridget, Carmen, Lena, and Tibby, and they're best friends living in Maryland. After many summers together, the four are finally going to be apart for a few months. Bridget's going to Mexico, Lena's going to Greece, Carmen is visiting her dad, and all the while, Tibby stays at home to work at a superstore. No matter where they are, they're connected by a mysterious pair of jeans that they found at a thrift shop. They share the pants over the summer, and these pants fit all four girls and exemplify their tight bond.
Yes, that is. I love it. I love this idea because when I watched this for the podcast, I was so shocked at how quickly they introduced the pants. It was like, right, we got these four friends. They're all weird. They're all different, but they love each other. And then also they have these pants. They have these trousers that fit them. And I was like, oh, we're straight in. We're not messing about, film. So, Rebecca, why did you pick this film to cover on the podcast?
When I was going through the list of content, there's so many good movies out there to pick from, and there's so many good movies to just like discuss in this light in general. But I kept coming back to Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants when I was scrolling through the list, and I was like, I feel like this is the one. And then mainly because it was a movie that I watched religiously as a child, like on my DVD player. I remember having the little like the paperback book that I had gotten at maybe like a Walmart, which is like equivalent to the Wallmans in the book. And and it was just such a movie that I also hadn't watched in a while. Like probably haven't seen since I was a teenager. And I was just excited to rewatch it in kind of this new lens that I have anyway. I'm just like how I see life very differently from how I did when I was a teenager or when I was like 10 when I was probably watching this. So I just felt like it would be really fun to explore.
Yeah, and you emailed me to say that you were watching it with some girlfriends.
Yes.
And how was that experience?
So fun. It was very like it actually ended up just being me and one of my other friends, but still we like had so much fun watching it because it was just like It's one of those. It's like, I know they describe it as a coming of age film, and
Yeah.
that has just always kind of been my genre. Always the genre that I just
Mm.
attract to, like any kind of like high school drama. I'm just like, I'm there, and yeah, I just felt like it would be fun to explore.
And so you mentioned how when you were younger, like, you watched this a lot. I definitely watched this a lot as well. When you were watching it this time, could you remember those kind of thoughts and feelings you had when you watched it when you were younger? Like, what did 10-year-old Rebecca think?
Yes, definitely. Especially, so I related to Carmen's character so much as a child.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
It was definitely the character that, probably one of the first characters in a film, in a movie, that I ever really connected with. Both on the
Mm.
fact that she was like kind of like the fat friend. It kind of goes
Mm-hmm.
unsaid, but it doesn't go unsaid at the same time.
Mm.
And then her relationship with her dad is very similar to the relationship I have with my own father. And so I
Hey.
kind of took from both. It just kind of felt, I just felt so seen by the characters.
Mm.
Yeah.
That is so important, and it's funny because I've had a few podcast episodes now where we've obviously talking about a plus size character in the film or in the TV, and my guest has always been able to go, oh, I really related to that person, and I've really struggled with that because I think when I was younger, I really struggled to admit to myself that I was a bigger kid. So
Mm-hmm.
I never found that, I don't know, relationship with those characters. But obviously, watching it now, I'm going, oh my God, why didn't I relate more to Carmen? And the thing is, I think Carmen is my favorite character, and I want to get into America Ferrera's performance because I truly think she's brilliant. I think they're all brilliant in this film. Like
I do
they're
too.
all brilliant, but she is so good. She is so good in her performance, and I think she is my favorite of the four. I think it's a really interesting storyline she gets. But yeah, I think coming back to it now, I don't know. It must be at least 15 years since I've seen it, right? And I completely forgot like half of it. I remember Carmen, I remember the whole thing with her dad, but I forgot that he was getting remarried. And then I remember Blake Lively going to Mexico and having this really odd affair that I want to get into. Yeah, I remember Blake Lively's weird relationship with the football coach. I totally forgot about Lena going to Greece. I completely forgot, like, left my brain. And I remember Tibby's relationship with the dying child, and I always remember finding that really upsetting. So I was really curious to see how I'd react this time round, being a little bit more older, a bit more wise, a bit more mature, and we'll get into our emotions in a bit because I was still very shocked at how
Yeah.
much I reacted. But let's talk about kind of like Carmen, and probably the reason we are covering this podcast, covering this film on Fats on Film. So Carmen is our token curvy character of the group. Her size and body is actually a real major plot line for her, more so than I remembered from when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
So like how do you feel the film handles this? And I'm going to put in air quotes, this plus size representation.
Yes, I like the air quotes of plus size representation, because
Mm,
I remember, as a kid, like, she was like the fat character, like in
uh-huh.
the movie, and then now looking at it, I'm like, she's just like maybe a size
Please.
6 among size 2s, you know?
I literally shocking, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
shocking.
yeah. That we just thought that she was just like, oh, like so much bigger than the other ones. And then
Yeah.
the the moment where like they are all trying on the pants,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
there's that moment of just like surprise that she like can fit into the pants that fits all of them.
She literally goes, how are those jeans going to fit? And she slaps her body all of this. And
Yeah.
I remember that from the trailer, Rebecca. I remember that being like emblazoned in my brain. And then she goes, will you help me get out of them? Because she's just so like convinced they're never going to fit. And it's in this scene where like Bridget has like taken off the jeans like just in the middle of the shop, by the way, just like in the middle
Yeah.
of the shop. She's down in her like knickers, and
Yes.
then and it's so weird. And then Carmen goes for the moment exactly, just in the middle of the shop, and I don't know if there's like a chuckle from one of the other girls, but she replies, "My thighs," like that,
Yes.
and I was like, "Baby, which thighs? Are the thighs in the room
Literally.
with us?"
Literally, where are the can't
Where
see
are
them.
they?
Yeah. No, I wrote down the exact same thing. I was like, she's talking about how self-degrading she is as the fat character, and like it almost feels like
Yes.
she's supposed to be like not wanting to be seen, or like not wanting like her friends to see her thighs or whatever. And it's so interesting to me thinking about like how I was as like a younger fat person, and how I also
Mm-hmm.
had that kind of like self-degradation like idea, because it's what we see in media.
100%, 100%. Something I see a lot in especially like teen films is the shopping mall experience, going to the mall with your friends and trying on clothes. And I hated. I loved being with my friends, obviously, but I hated going into the shops to try on stuff because I just knew it would never fit me.
Yep.
And so very similar to Carmen being like, she obviously, says it with a bit of a lilt. She's like, I'm saying it so you don't have to.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I again, now 31-year-old Hannah, I really relate to that because I was doing that when I was 14, 15, 16. Just being like, oh, there's no point in me trying that on because it's never going to fit me.
Yeah.
I'd walk into, so I grew up in Spain, and Zara was a really big thing in Spain before it became a bit more globalized. And Zara was like always the cool ghetto place to go when I was younger. But their sizing back then, and we're talking like 15 years ago, was small. And I wished and willed for something to fit me in that shop, and I knew it never did, and never ever did. And to see Carmen, go to the thrift shop, she's like, "Oh no, I'm not even gonna try these on. I'm not even gonna try these on because I'll you'll have to cut them off of me, like that kind of a
Yeah.
thing." I was like, "Oh baby, I get that. I did that. I did
Yeah.
that."
Yeah. And I think that is a almost universal experience for like people who have grown up like being a fat teenager or a fat like middle schooler, because so many people I have talked to like through coaching or through just talking to them on Instagram, they're like, this kind of
Mm,
shopping experience is very
yes.
common. That I was
Yeah.
one time joking with someone about it, like just in a funny way. They were saying like, yeah, my friends would just all be in the back, shopping, and I just spend like an
Mm-hmm.
hour just looking at like accessories or like sunglasses.
Oh, oh my god, absolutely. That hurts actually hearing them like, oh yeah, no babe, I was there. I was by the shoes,
Yep. Like I could inventory all of the necklaces that are in this store, because that's how long
Uh-huh.
I've been looking at them. And
Yes.
it's so it's so weird that that is like the case. And then it is also very interesting to me, and this is probably just a me thing maybe, but
Mm-hmm.
watching Carmen and them try on the jeans, I'm like, I one of my worst fears is like thrift store jeans, not because they're from the thrift store, but because they're probably not stretchy at all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, I would be so scared to try those jeans on as Carmen, and I feel like that fear like showed through for her.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. But again, she's just laughing it off,
Right.
and but then they do fit and like they look amazing, and that's the whole thing, right? They all look fantastic in these jeans. And then they go and they do this, like they sneak into like the studio that their parents met when they were pregnant with them, and they
Yeah.
just so happen to have these embezzled like candles, these emblazoned candles, and then they like do like some kind of witchy thing, and I was like, oh, this is a bit witchy though, like
Yes. I was like,
you
this a little
know,
seancey. Like
yeah.
I was kind of taken by the candles too. I was like, did they do this before? Like, have they always had these
Yeah.
candles?
Yeah, I was like, this is definitely something they have done before. Like they've
Yeah.
obviously broken into this place before, and they've come together for whatever reason. But this is like the first time we see it as the audience, and they've got like this magical pair of jeans. So we need to light these candles and say thank you to whoever it was that gave us these jeans. Really
Yep.
interesting. But they want to like create a charter, like some rules, and one of these rules is you cannot call yourself fat while wearing the pants. That's Bridget says that to Carmen, like looks at Carmen to be like, babe, I know that's you. And Carmen goes, oh, that hurts. Like, and then she goes, you can't even think it.
Yep.
What, like, did you have friends when you were growing up who always like I understand where Bridget's coming from. She's obviously not, being like, stop, like, self-degrading yourself. You fit in these jeans, we all fit these jeans, therefore you cannot be fat. But did you have friends like that who always try to, like, lift you up, even though... Not, I don't want to say them trying to minimize issues, because I don't think that's what Bridget's doing. She's trying to lift her up, but at the same time, I understand why Carmen feels the way Carmen does, and that shouldn't be minimized either. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those things where, like, it's kind of similar to the you're not fat, you're beautiful type of idea.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And that was definitely something I experienced as, like, growing up, or, like, you have such a pretty face. And then, like, that being, like, the end of it. And then, but yeah, I think she, because I wrote down that moment, too, because it's interesting that, like, fat here, like, however they're referencing it, fat is a negative thing. Like, you don't want to be fat.
100%.
But it's not that they, like, don't acknowledge that she's bigger than them, but it's also, like, I feel like it ultimately comes down to that. Like, you're beautiful, but you're not fat. But it's not like you're beautiful and fat. It's like you can be both. But at this time in time in life, it was like, no.
Please. Yeah, absolutely no. We absolutely did not have that very positive message in these things. Like, fat was always seen as a very derogatory word, and to some people it still is. And I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, you need to, get over it. Like, ultimately, you need to, like, journey through that yourself and, like, take that power away from that word. Because, like, again, I'm not going to sit here and say I haven't been called fat in a negative way. Of course I have. But ultimately, it's through my recovery, I have found that word doesn't have the same power it once did. And obviously intention is really important as well. Like, Bridget would never have called Carmen just fat, like, negatively, never, because that's not the friendships that they have. But I don't know, I really understood where Carmen was coming from, because that was obviously a defense mechanism for her to, like, almost break the tension. Like, just call myself fat, I'm in the thrift shop, nothing's gonna fit me, I'm just gonna say I'm too big for this. I understand where she was coming from. And actually, just to go back one step, there's a moment where, like, I think they've had their kind of intro to everyone, like, where everyone is in their own lives, and you've got Carmen narrating over the top, and she says, so Carmen says, I wrote it down, she goes, wild unstoppable Bridget, shy and beautiful Lena, the rebel Tibby, and me, the writer Carmen. And I thought that was really interesting, because with the other three, and I appreciate she's talking about herself, so it's a bit difficult, but the other three, she gives them, like, personality traits, and then for herself, she gives, like, a skill.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but what's your personality, Carmen? You can absolutely be a writer. Obviously, that's still a positive thing to be, of course, but it's very telling. She sees her friends as, like, personalities and personas and humans, but she herself can only give herself, like, a pat on the back for being, like, a good writer.
Yeah, and that's actually interesting. It's something I remember that moment, but I like the way that you brought that up, because it made me think about how yes, with Bridget, like, her intentions for sure, like, they mention later on that, like, you need to, like, love your friends and love yourself, or something about like that. And I'm like, so that spoke to me in the sense that, like, I know where her friends are coming from. Her friends love her. They don't care what her body looks like.
No.
But then it's also like, is Carmen, like, when she talks about herself being the writer, it is very interesting, because it's almost much more likely to see, like, the beauty in other people than we are ourselves, especially the people that we love and care about. And I think that was very evident in that, like, her talking about, like, I'm a writer, doesn't really go into any kind of, like, physical description, any kind of, like, description of, like you said, personality or anything like that. It's just this kind of, like, skill. And it is interesting that she sees all these things in her friends, but not necessarily herself.
Yeah, Exactly. And I get you're totally right actually. It is so much easier to compliment others than it is yourself. And especially going back to, this is 2005, right? So this idea of body positivity, self-love isn't as mainstream as it is today. So maybe I don't know if they are making a musical adaptation, as I read at the beginning of this film. So I wonder, like, a way to get around that and to make sure that everyone gets their kind of like beautiful summary of who they are. They can have the other characters say it for each other, because then it kind of takes away that like awkwardness when it comes to complimenting yourself.
Yes.
Yeah, it's so Carmen, her storyline is that she's going to go to it's either North or South Carolina, right? You'll know because you actually live
Yeah,
there.
she's in South Carolina. I think she's in Charleston, but yes, yeah,
Charleston.
I remember watching the movie, and when they're doing like the little drive-through scene towards the very end, and you see all like the signs, I was like, "There's North Carolina," and I was like, "That's me."
That's you. They drove by Rebecca's house, but hey, girl, and carried on going.
They did. They stopped right by my house, and I was like, "Hey," and then
hey, friends. Yeah. So yeah, she's going to South Carolina to meet her dad, and her dad left at some point when she was younger. And he's played by Bradley Whitford, and I about lost my chair. I was like, Bradley Whitford coming through. I did not remember it was him. And then I realized we have a bit of a Handmaid's Tale reunion because you've got Bradley Whitford and Alexis Bledel. I was like, whoa, very different stories.
Very different. I thought about Alexis Bledel from Handmaid's Tale as well when I first saw her on the screen. I was like, very different characters. But yeah, so Bradley Whitford is daddy, and he drives her to his new house, and she's very shocked. She's like, what, this, you never wanted to live in a development. And we find out Carmen clearly idolizes her dad. She remembers everything he's ever said to her ever. And oh god, I just find it so awkward because he doesn't seem to reciprocate that same enthusiasm that she has. And oh my, it breaks my damn heart. It breaks my heart. And she arrives, and there's a woman just waving outside the house, and turns out he's found himself a partner who has her own kids, and he is getting married at the end of the summer, and Carmen will be a bridesmaid. And oh my god, like, I mean, obviously I know it's a film and I know it's for drama, but truly, what a dick move. I feel like every like child of a like of divorced parents, that's like your worst nightmare, is like your other parent that you don't live with, like getting married and just finding a whole new family, and then it's just like, who am I? And I've definitely related to that in Carmen's character. But yeah, the fact that he doesn't even mention to her at all before they meet, I'm just like, you don't know your daughter, clearly, because like, who would be okay with that?
Literally, like, and not even as he's picked her up at the train station. He's waited till they've driven into like the cul-de-sac to be like, oh, by the way, Lydia is the stepmom, and the kids, and you're just like, and also I think it's really, really important to know, obviously Carmen being Latina, and the new family is like fully white, and obviously that's going to create a lot of tension, and it's interesting how the film kind of shows that tension. But as Lydia seems nice, but she's just, I don't know, she's not evil stepmother by any means, but she definitely does seem to be a bit self-serving. But they explain that away to be because she's planning the wedding. Oh, she's got the wedding, she never had a wedding, she wants the wedding, blah, 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 blah. And I guess we're meant to be like, oh, but it is nice that she's going to be a bridesmaid. But Rebecca, you mentioned that you came from like divorced parents. How would you feel being asked to be bridesmaid to a woman you've never met before?
Once again, that kind of worst mentality type of thing comes in, because I would have, being the kind of like naturally like a little bit rebellious kind of person I am, if someone tells me to do something, I'm always just kind of like, And so I would not have vibed well with that, especially because I feel like his new fiance Lydia is very different from Carmen's mom, and I think that kind of throws Carmen off a little bit too. Like, the family is very different from Carmen and her mom, and I think that would have been I mean, we'll talk about that too, about like the skin color aspect of how they don't
Yeah.
really address it, which was kind of weird.
No. It is weird because that's like clearly like the big red flag in all this. Like, anyway, I've got we're gonna put a pin in that, and we'll come back to it. Dad realizes that he's been neglecting his daughter. He's like, "Let's go play tennis together." And I love this. First of all, love Carmen's tennis outfit. How cute was that?
Adorable. Like, she was wearing the tennis dress before before it was fashion.
Oh, is she the blueprint?
Honestly, America Ferrera is the blueprint.
Yeah, 100%. She just it's just so adorable, and I love this idea that we're seeing a curvier woman participating in sport. You know, again, we don't get to see that a lot, and you know, Daddy like boys are off and is like, you know, I've got to go sort out about the wedding, but go play tennis with the stepson Paul, who doesn't speak. And and you know, you see Carmen absolutely go hell for leather. She is angry. She's taking it out on this tennis ball. She's taking it out on stepbrother Paul. And I love this scene as much as like it shows her anger and we understand why she's angry. It was just really good to see this bigger character. And I'm going to use air quotes there because bigger is subjective in this context, but definitely bigger in the scheme or the eyes of the film. Exercising, being really skilled at a sport, enjoying it, breaking a sweat, like that is positive representation in my eyes.
No, for sure. I actually started playing tennis in middle school because of this movie. Because I saw her play, like I tried out for the tennis team in 7th grade.
Oh my god, that's incredible.
Yeah, it was definitely a kind of like I definitely feel like at that time I felt seen by her, like by a bigger person playing a sport. And then I was like, oh, like I could totally do this. And so
babe, yes. And you know what? This is why we talk about this. Representation matters. You need to see yourself doing these things to know that they're available to you. Yeah. And I'm so pleased to hear you took that away from this character. What an awesome thing to take away.
Yeah, and I remember thinking it was so cool that she was playing tennis, and I just felt like, I don't know if it was like the sport itself or what, but like there was just something cool about it, and I was just like, I want to do that. Like, I want to be cool like she is. And the fact that like it felt like it was something that was attainable, like something that like I really could do, and something that I actually ended up doing, and I like played tennis through like half of high school, and like it was very fun for me, and it is definitely like won in part because of this.
Love Tennis Carmen, and we love the representation it brought to you, which I'm just so over the moon to hear. It just warms my heart. Then we go into Carmen trying on the bridesmaid's dress. So this is a real like pivot moment in the film, isn't it? Where she comes, so we see stepdaughter, whatever her name is. She tries on
Krista.
Oh, thank you so much, Krista. She's on the dress, and you know, it looks good on her. It fits. I guess that's the most important thing. It fits. And then Carmen comes out, and you know, there's that big like whip back of the dressing room curtain, and she proclaims that she looks like a tramp. And the seamstress woman literally says, "Oh dear."
I wrote down like the kind of like things that they said about Carmen and about her in the dress. And here let me just list some of the ones I wrote down. So the lady goes, "We can let this way out. We need to let this way out." And then she says, "Let's hope we can dig up some extra fabric." And then she's like, "Better off starting from scratch with this one." And then when Carmen has gone back to change, because she's like, "Can I please like change out of this because I hate this." And they're talking about her kind of like behind her back a little bit while she's changing, and they're talking about how like they want to really like cinch the dress in, and then the mom actually said, or Lydia actually says, "Will she look like Krista?" And then the last thing they said is, "We're just going to start over on the other ones."
Oh, God.
And I was just like, I would have, because after that, she kind of like blows up on them, and I would have too, because they are just dogging her, like, for no fault of her own. They make a comment that her dad, like, I'm sorry that her dad didn't know, like, would be so off on her size or something like that. And so, like, this is no fault of her own. Like, it's her dad not knowing what her size was. And then I was like, I feel for her in that moment, because they are just ripping her apart.
It is awful. And as I watched it again, I'm meant to be 15 years older than Carmen is in this scene, and my heart breaks for her, because what a nasty situation. Like, we already know, judging by the thrift shop scene when they get the jeans, she's going to hate this. She's going to hate this process. And to make it such an like, they go out of their way to make it uncomfortable for her,
Yeah.
Talking about her as if she's not there, as if she doesn't have ears, like, just so awful. And then what I find interesting, though, is, she comes like, I look like a tramp. I truly don't think she looks that bad.
I didn't either. I thought she looked good. I mean, other than like there's like a little bit on the back that wasn't zipped all the way up.
Little bit,
but I was like, maybe there was like a little bit too much boobage for however old she was. But I was like, that still looks good. Like, she looks cute.
But I wondered where that phrase, I look like a tramp, like, comes from. Like, does she mean like a little bit, revealing, a bit too provocative for a girl of her age? And I guess I mean, you'll tell me, like, what's South Carolina like? Is it quite a conservative area? Would that, would want to be, like, covered up if you were, especially for, like, a 16-year-old girl?
I would say yes. South Carolina is, in that point in time, definitely. I mean, even still today, it's a very conservative place to be. The only thing that, like, comes up for me about, like, being covered up is, like, this is the summer, and South Carolina is hot. Like, it is very hot outside. So, like, the idea of, like, covering up, like, I just remember being one of those kids that would always be wearing a cardigan no matter, like, what the degree it was outside.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel this in Carmen a little bit. Like, even though she's not, like, she actively wears, like, the same kind of clothes that everybody else is wearing in the movie. Yeah. But I get that kind of vibe in these shopping scenes that, like, she would much rather, like, the focus not be on her, not on her body, and, like, want to be covered up in that way.
Definitely. And like you say, Carmen blows up. Carmen, she says that she's, you hadn't considered that Carmen's Puerto Rican and she might be built differently. And unlike you and your daughter, she has an ass!
That was, like, the one part of the movie that I remember, like, forever all the way through, was her telling them that she has an ass.
She has an ass. And then she grabs her stuff and she runs. I literally wrote in my notes, run, babe. Run away. Like, you do.
Like, literally without her shoes.
No, babe. Like, you should have got the time. Like, just get the hell out of there, because it is so, like, this is, like, really insidious, because no one outwardly is saying what they want to say, and it's behind all these pleasantries and smiles. And, you've definitely been in situations, because I know I've been in a situation where, I loved your phrase, someone's dogging you, but in a way that isn't explicit. And if you call out, you look like the sensitive one.
Yeah, you look like you're overreacting or, like, reading too much into it.
Yes.
But it's like, you can tell when someone is, like, well, I feel like in this situation too, like, the fact that they have to, like, make a brand new dress and they're, like, kind of making a big deal out of it, like, that would make me feel bad. Like, yes, it's like, oh, I'm just, like, making this harder for everybody else.
Yeah.
On top of the fact that, like, I'm bigger, so they've got to make a bigger dress.
Yeah.
And it's just, I felt so frustrated for her in that moment, because they don't even seem to, like, acknowledge that, like, this could have some type of impact on her, like, how they're talking. It's like, basically, she's just an object up there wearing a dress.
100%. And then that is solidified when Carmen finally makes her way back to her dad's, and there's, like, lights off. She's like, oh, they're probably out looking for me. Oh, God bless her. And she goes around the back and she realizes they're just sat down having dinner. Happy families. I remember
that part as a child, and I remember being, like, heartbroken in that moment, because they don't even know where she is, not even looking for her. It's like her dad has just completely moved on.
Yes. And, like, she's not from there. she doesn't know where she's going. Why are they not concerned where their child is?
I'm like, she just took a cab home.
Yeah,
I was like, I would
want
not
money.
just a cab. Literally, she's like 16 or 17, and she's just like running around. Yeah, she's like not even from here, and I'm just like, why are they just sitting there having a nice dinner? Their daughter is just out running around.
Literally. And it's just the audacity of like how clearly their lives would be quote unquote easier without Carmen in it. She is a reminder of Dad's previous family, and he hasn't got time for previous family because he's got new family now. Yep. And you know, she comes around, oh my god, and she like throws a brick at the window, and I'm like, all power to you, all power to you. I do not condone violence, but I get it, do it. And then she runs back home. And, she gets back home, and her mum in this situation is like, I told you this would happen. It's like, babe, that's not helpful, is it?
And I'm like, you can think that, but you don't need to tell her that. Like, you do not need to. No. She's like, she says at one point, like, I hate to be like, I told you so. And then Carmen's like, then don't.
Then don't. Please, babe. No.
And I'm like, that's.
Literally. But then Tibby and Carmen, they have a bit of a tiff, as friends do. They're actually both right in this situation, I think. Like, you know, Carmen's 100% right for being angry, and Tibby's 100% right for grieving. Like, it's just one of those things where they can't communicate because they're both so wrapped up in their own emotions. But
exactly,
they're lifelong friends. They're going to get through it. And Tibby finally encourages Carmen to pick up the phone and tell her dad that she's angry. And there's that I neglected to write down the exact line that Tibby says, but she, you know, Carmen says, I'm angry at you. Why do I have no problem saying I'm angry at you, but I can't tell my dad that? And Tibby says, is it because you know I'll love you regardless?
Yes.
And it's that moment where Carmen realizes that she finds the love from her dad is subjective of whether or not she toes the line, of whether or not she's the perfect daughter. Breaks my heart.
I know. I actually teared up at this part because her, like, I don't know. It's like having that conversation with your parent and being that vulnerable to talk to them, like, so real. Like, it's something that I've, like, haven't experienced with my own dad. Mm-hmm. And so I, like, feel for her so much in that moment. And mm-hmm. then I also feel for Tibby, too, because it's one of those things where they're both going through... both going through it.
Yeah.
And they...
Mainly.
And it's like two really big things, and they, like you were saying, they don't know how to communicate it because they're going through, like, it's just so emotional on both ends. Mm-hmm. And then when she's talking to her dad, and he's... I think the last part of the conversation is, like, he's telling her that he's, like, sorry for, you know... Like, and she's like, well, sometimes, like, sorry is not good enough.
Yeah, that scene when Carmen rings her dad, and, you know, this back and forth, and then she says, why does Paul get to visit his alcoholic dad once a month, but you visit me twice a year? You seem so happy to be Paul and Krista's dad, but have no time to be mine. Rebecca absolutely tears. I was bawling my eyes out.
No, same. And I think America Ferrera's performance there is so... It's so raw and so real. Like, it just feels like I feel her pain there. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's something that, like, I relate to, like I've mentioned, mm-hmm. but also just, like, seeing someone have that conversation, and then kind of like you mentioned earlier, where, like, she feels that her dad's love is basically conditional. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not this kind of unconditional love that she now realizes that she has from her friends, because her friends love her no matter what. Mm-hmm. But then it feels like her dad, like, she is kind of on the back burner for her dad, whereas he has this new family that is seemingly perfect. Mm. And I feel for her so hard in that moment, because it's tough to watch, because it's very, like, upsetting to see mm-hmm. someone, you know, that, especially, like, she's so young, and, like, mm-hmm. talking to an adult this way is very hard.
Yeah, and also his reaction is to put his head in his hands and just say sorry. Like, he himself, I don't know whether it's Bradley Whitford's performance or what. I just didn't feel like the fact that he didn't seem to understand the gravity of the situation until she says it. And I know that was Tibby's point, like, you have to tell him. But at the same time, I'm like, how did you not know? She threw a brick at your window, man. She's clearly hurting. And the fact that she's the one who has to ring him, why is he not ringing her?
Yes, that part is extremely frustrating. Because it's like, why does she have to go to him to the wedding?
Again. And I know and the thing is, that happy ending when she, the friends take her to the wedding, she puts on the jeans because the jeans are still magical, and he sees her in the crowd and realizes they have to pause the ceremony to bring her up to be part of the family. And I know it's meant to be seen as a happy ending, and Carmen is happy and smiley, and I'm never going to take that away from her. But I was really, like, again, with my adult head going, he should have done so much more.
Yes, no, she deserved like him to actively choose her in this situation, which I know he kind of does by bringing her up with the family, but it's not like he came and picked her up and was like, I want you to be here.
Literally, I was about to say, if we could rewrite that ending, I would say he would rock up at the door and said, I will not get married until you're by my side, until you sign off on this marriage. And that would be a much more stronger message that he actually cares what his daughter thinks, cares about being part of this family. And yeah, I just it's one of those things where, like, okay, I know it's like an 18-year-old film or however old book, but I'd like to rewrite that ending, please. It just doesn't sit right with me.
I agree.
But the next thing I want to talk about with Carmen specifically, and we mentioned it earlier, is, see, Carmen being Latina and the dad and then the step family all being white is clearly something that other films would discuss. And you do have moments where you see that they've got a housekeeper, and she has like brown skin color. Obviously, like I guess it's insinuated that she is also Latina, even though you can't really see her. And Carmen feels like she can't ask potentially a fellow Latina person to tidy up after herself. And she's like, oh, I'll just do it myself, it's no problem. And the fact that Lydia, the stepmom, seems really, she doesn't recognize this nuance. She's like, don't worry, like, she'll just do it for you. And, Carmen's like, no, I will clean my own sheets, it's not a problem. But that's the only, and then again, you have the whole, like, you didn't think that Carmen would be Puerto Rican and she has an ass. But that's really it in terms of when they're talking about kind of race and skin color in the context of this, because I feel the film, instead of communicating the skin color difference, they communicate the difference through body type.
Yes, and I think it is very interesting, because I feel like there's not many, I can't think right now of any other kind of examples where that's the case.
Yeah.
And it is very interesting. I wrote down the part about their the housekeeper bit, because it's almost that Lydia doesn't understand that nuance, like you said, but it's almost as if she gets insulted by Carmen, because Carmen makes a comment. She's like, people wash their own sheets all the time.
Yeah.
And it was almost like that's what Lydia took from it. Like, it was like, oh, like, she doesn't like me because I don't, like, because we have a housekeeper, not because, like, it's awkward for Carmen because the housekeeper may also be Latina. And it's like she doesn't understand that kind of the kind of issue that Carmen is experiencing. Lydia doesn't understand. And it's like, today, if this movie had been made, I feel like that would definitely be like a very active part of the conversation, because it should be.
It should be. It should be more explicit, and you're totally right. I think, like, from a Lydia point of view, I think she thinks that Carmen's turning down her hospitality, whereas it's so much more nuanced than that. And then again, you have Carmen coming down one morning speaking Spanish, because her dad speaks Spanish, but yet we never hear him speak Spanish. And, she's just like, that's my culture. And it does feel like the dad side of the family is really trying to whitewash Carmen.
Yeah.
Even that, he now goes to church, and I'm assuming it's a white church. And, she says to her mum, we tried so many times to come to church on a Sunday, but he refused. Like, who is this man? Yeah. And it really does feel racist that he has traded in his Latina brown family for this white picket fence, literally white family.
Yeah, this, like, perfect looking, like, evangelical family. Like, they just look like what you would picture, like, you hear an evangelical white family and, like, you see these people. It's, like, the perfect nuclear family, too.
Yes, yeah. And, like, you know, like, he, the boy, Paul, he's, like, you know, a sports star for something, you know, they say, like, oh, you're, like, the golden boy's dad, and you hear all that. And then, so, but it's also, like, he's traded in his daughter, his curvier daughter, for, like, a straight-sized daughter. Mm-hmm. So, and I think the film, instead of tackling the straight up, you know, skin color difference between the two sides, they're more tackling the body structure difference of the two sides. And like you said, mentioned earlier, I don't know if I've heard that or seen that in a film before, or at least not when it's also tied to the actual racial implications as well. It just feels really isolating. And again, I never noticed it when I was younger. I was only with this lens on and 2023 lens on at that I go, oh, that's an interest. I don't think it's wrong. I'm reserved to say it's not wrong, but it does feel a little bit icky.
Yes, it definitely, because naturally, I mean, when you think about, like, people from different places, and even Carmen mentions that, she's like, our bodies are built, like, we're built different, like, we're not, like, the same race, like, our bodies are different, and it's interesting that, like, Carmen is the one that has to point out, like, her kind of, like, cultural difference from them. It's like they're kind of, like, stepping around it, like, they don't want to tell her that she is, like, Latina, and they are not, but but it's very clear that, like, she is different. And then it is weird because the body aspect is, like, it's just, it feels like they, like, kind of took, like, an easier route of discussing the differences between them, because it's like, oh, well, she's not, like, super thin and white. But, like, they rather focus on the fact that she's just not super thin, instead of like the racial aspect of it.
You've articulated that much better than I have, so I thank you for that. But yeah, it was an odd observation this time round, and again, it'd be interesting when they do the musical adaptation how they adopt that, because I don't know. As I'm thinking, as you were talking then, I was reminded of the Sabrina Strings book, Fearing the Black Body, and how fatness is related to racism. And so even though it's not explicitly said, I should say, so explicitly said that, you know, they're white and she's Latina, like they never say that, but through the way they treat her body is racist. I think that's what I'm coming down to. I'm like, I think it is actually racist.
No, I think so too. Exactly. And plus, Fearing the Black Body is one of the best books
it's fantastic.
I've ever read. I like have to read it like once a year, because I'm like, I need to put this all, I just want it all in my head.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so true that they treat her body as if, like, I do think it is kind of in a racist context, because it's like, you can't detach that, like, her body is different, like, and her race is different. Like, you can't be like the one without the other. Like, they're both there. And I think it's hard, and, like, I don't know. I think it also goes into kind of, like, 2005 America too, and just, like, how different interracial marriages were viewed then than they are now.
Well, that's a really good point.
I mean, even still today, there's, like, people that have issues with people that are in interracial marriages, but, like, back then, like, I feel like it would probably be even different, especially being in the South too. Like, because you can already see, like, most likely, I don't know for sure, but most likely when, like, Lydia and her family think of a brown person, they think of their housekeeper.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily think of it as, like, a member of their family.
That's a really good point. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that is very evident in how they approach her, because in many of the conversations that, or, like, the interactions that she has with Lydia, they don't know how to, like, talk to her. Like that instance when she comes downstairs and she's speaking Spanish, and her dad's just like, no one can understand you. And they're all just kind of, like, grinning, like, that awkward smile where, like, you don't know what to say. And it's very evident that they don't know how to really interact with her. And I think it does come from a race standpoint.
Yeah.
For sure.
And even in that, like, her father, because she is mixed race ultimately, her father speaks Spanish. He speaks her mother tongue and yet still refuses to back her up in that situation. Oh God, honestly, I know they were meant to like Dad in the end. I cannot stand Dad. I'm like, mate,
same.
You need to absolutely buck up. You know what I'm saying?
Like, do better.
Do better, please. But yeah, like, he doesn't back up his daughter. You're right, and in that interaction, you've got Lydia and Krista doing the very womanly thing of cleaning up the kitchen, where Dad is like over here eating like eggs and toast or something. Yep. And you're it's just like, oh my God, like these stereotypes on stereotypes. But I guess like from Karma's point of view, she is trying to show there are massive differences here. There are differences in how they treat people. There are differences in, like, what is, quote unquote women's work, what is housework, what do they give to the housekeeper, what do they do themselves, the wedding and how that's like the biggest thing in the world, where all Carmen wants to do is just have a relationship with her dad. Like, you see all these differences. And then the big boiling point moment is the bridesmaid dress moment, where she doesn't fit into her white stepsister's dress, just like stepmom wants her to, because she's built differently.
Yeah, she like literally in that moment doesn't fit into the family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, she doesn't fit into the dress physically. Mm-hmm. And I think that makes her feel as if, like, she is not meant to be in this family. And I think she mentioned something in that moment, like just forget Carmen exists altogether, or something like that.
She does. But yeah, your point there, like, she just doesn't fit in. Like, she just doesn't fit in. Before we pivot on to like the rest of the film, I wanted to ask, we've been using air quotes to describe Carmen as plus size or as the fat character. And I guess like the big, like, and I don't mean this pun, elephant in the room, is she isn't that big at all. And that's the thing, American Ferrera has never been that big, and yet she was typecast as the quote-unquote fat Latina actress. And I would love to hear her thoughts on that, because that must have done some wonders for the body dysmorphic mind, But yeah,
she is probably still unlearning that stuff today.
Totally. And I mean, you've mentioned how you really related to Carmen, even though, like, I was going to speak for you then. Could you distinguish back then that she actually wasn't that big, or did it take your 2023 unlearning diet culture brain to go, oh, actually, she really isn't that much bigger than the other girls?
It definitely took my 2023 brain, because I definitely, at the time, I was like, and it makes me think back to, like, looking at myself at that age and thinking how fat I felt at that time, like fat derogatory at that time. And I really wasn't either. Like, I mean, I was like not very, very thin, but I was not like as fat as I had like conceived in my mind. And I think I definitely saw her because I was like, oh, she's bigger than her friends. Like, that's me. I identify with that.
Yeah, it's that simple distinguishment between she is just bigger than the other three, and therefore I relate to being the odd one out in that circumstance. But I'm the same. I remember watching when I was younger, and I remember thinking, oh my gosh, she's so much bigger than the other girls, because that's what they're telling us. That's what they were telling us.
And that's like her whole like plot line. Like her whole storyline is based on the fact that she is different. Literally. So, like,
being 10, 11, 12 years old, however old we were when we first watched this, we've just internalized going, oh, well, that's what the film's saying, so that must be true, And I just think it is so, going back to breaking my heart, it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart to think that is what the media considered to be big, fat, plus size, air quotes all the way around. And it's taken us, 15 years or however long it's been, 18 years actually, to go, oh, babe wasn't even like that big. She's just, she absolutely is curvy. I'll not take that away from her. She's absolutely curvy.
Right.
But that's it. Like, she's got like a flat stomach. You know, she's got a really nice shape to her body, and I appreciate that is subjective. But yeah, but how the story treats her is like, you know, she's like an absolute behemoth, you know?
Yeah, it is so bizarre, the fact that, like, when I was watching this as a child, I totally bought into the fact that, like, she was the fat character,
literally.
And that was kind of, like, her thing. And it's interesting because none of the other girls, like, with the exception of Lena a little bit, none of the other girls ever really talk about, like, their bodies.
Yeah, like, well, I do want to get into Lena's character because I find her progression really interesting. But yeah, you're totally right. No one else speaks about it. I think, like, you know, Blake Lively's Bridget mentions how she's super tall, which she is.
Yeah.
But that's it. That's kind of like, I don't think Tibby has anything body related at all.
I don't think she does either.
No.
And it's just interesting that, like, the fat character is the one that has, like,
yeah, totally. Right. So let's go into Lena then, because I think Lena's story, when you juxtapose against Carmen's, is so interesting. So Lena is Alexis Bledel's character, and we understand her to be very shy, and she dresses very modestly. You know, she doesn't like to wear jeans, we understand. She doesn't like to wear, like, short skirts or dresses or strappy dresses. She very much likes to have her arms covered. She likes to hide her body for whatever reason. We actually don't understand why. That's just how she's most comfortable. And the other girls mock her a little bit for this. Like, you know, like, look at this body. I just can hear Bridget say, look at this body. You know, she does look, you know, she's a very slender person. Alexis Bledel is a very slender person. So as an outsider looking in, we can't understand why she wouldn't want to show off her body, because her body is, quote unquote, the dream body for a lot of people. And what are your thoughts on that? Why is it important for Lena's storyline that she starts her journey hiding her body?
I think it's important, one, because it, like, discusses the fact that, one, she doesn't mention, like, the full reason why she doesn't like to be, like you mentioned, why she doesn't keep it covered, like, whether it's a, like, moral issue, like a religious type of thing. But I found it very interesting that in this situation, if, like, a very thin woman, or, like, if just a thin woman is covering up for whatever reason, but if it is kind of like a morality type thing, like a modesty type thing, I feel like that kind of covering up is very respected in culture. I feel like it's, I mean, in some cases it's even, like, encouraged, like, you have to cover up. But it's interesting thinking about, like, how it relates to Lena in that way, and the fact that, like, I just thought it was weird that, like, she spent this entire, like, her entire life, or up till this point that we know of, being very shy, being very, like, closed off as far as, like, meeting guys or, like, doing stuff with other people. And I find it very weird that she just kind of, like, in the middle of the movie, just strips off all of her clothes and jumps in the water.
Like,
I'm like, that's just a lot of build-up to just, like, to that. Well,
yeah, she has this moment where she's standing on the pier, and she is crying because what were her reasons? Like, the Blake Lively's character, like, Bridget can still, like, offer her heart up to people, even though, like, her mother had killed herself several years before. There's another reason. She's like, oh, these people are so willing to open themselves up, and I hide myself away. And I guess that's it. She's hiding herself away because she doesn't want to be seen. I think she's very scared of someone perceiving her, falling in love with her, and her vice versa. Very vulnerable. I appreciate that. But my God, I thought the tears were a bit dramatic. I was like, baby, come on. It's fine. You're 16.
Like, you are a good girl.
You're fine.
Like, and I get it. I know being a 16-year-old girl literally feels like the toughest thing in the world. And part of me is like, it is. But it's almost just like, I think the other reason was the guy she was with. I think his parents had died or something.
Yes, they died in a car crash, and he was in Chicago, and he had to move back to Greece.
Yes. And I think that's what the other, like, like, why are these people able to be so free when, like, terrible things have happened to them, and, like, nothing terrible has happened to me, but I, like, can't be that open, and it is weird
Yeah.
In a way, because it's, I don't know.
I think what doesn't help Lena's storyline as well, so we never meet her parents. She's the only one who we don't see any parental figure for. So
That's true.
So I guess we can't understand where this has come from. So like, I guess if we'd seen that maybe her mum also dressed super modestly, we'd understand it had been passed down there. But because we don't have that, and we just have Lena going to Greece because her Yaya and Babu are in Greece, and we find out she is Greek. That's kind of it, and they seem really nice. Like Yaya, they love her. She's obviously like a really big family,
and they don't necessarily seem very conservative either. Because I remember when she first when she meets Costas the first time, and then she comes back and she has that shirt, or the shirt of his, and her Yaya washes it, and she's like, "Did you meet a boy?"
Yeah,
and they seem very excited about it at first.
But Rebecca, he's a Dunas.
I know, he's a Dunas.
They're like, not a Dunas, and I was like, oh my god, not a Dunas.
It's like, no,
the worst thing in the world. No.
I know, it was the drama at that moment.
So yeah, she strips off into her underwear, jumps in the water, and I don't know why, but Costa seems to understand that he's also meant to be there because he just appears.
Literally just appears.
He just appears, and he's like, yes, she's finally free. And then he jumps in the water, and they have a bit of a thing, and then we get a montage from Lena. She starts wearing strappy dresses. She
wears her hair down.
She's got the jeans, she's got the trousers. She's learning to drive a moped. She's putting curls in her hair, and oh my god, as someone who was a curly hair gal, it makes me howl when they're like, she's free now, she's got curls in her hair. She's let go of the restrictions of society. She's put down the straighteners. I mean, she looks great. So she looked great.
She's just free and living her best curly life.
She's living that beach wavy life.
And they're also the perfect curls. They're perfect ringlets.
Yeah. And the thing is, this is the perfect summer romance. Costas clearly likes her. She's getting into him. They're going out for drinks and dancing. But then the grandparents come in, and there's a whole Romeo and Juliet issue. What I find interesting about this romance, though, is there is clearly an age difference, but they don't really distinguish how much it is. So again, are the girls meant to be 16 or 17?
So I think in the books, they are 16.
Yeah.
But in the movie, I think they are 17. I think they're about to go into their senior year of high school.
And that would make them 17.
Yeah.
Right, because I wrote down that they were 16, but then you have that really obvious scene with Bridget and what's his face, the football coach, and she says that she's 17, and I thought she might be lying.
Oh.
Because it makes her look older. Because I don't know whether I actually probably should Google it quickly, how old are these girls meant to be? Because again, that adds even more ickiness to the Bridget storyline, which what's it called? The Sisterhood of the Southern Pants. We're literally talking.
I'm excited to get into to talk about the Bridget storyline.
The Bridget storyline. I have so many thoughts. Right, how old are you meant to be? Yes, Google. In the movie, the girls begin the summer at 16, as in the book, but Bridget lies about her age to the coach, saying she is 17.
The drama!
I knew it. When she said it, I was like, I'm sure she's I don't know, they must have said something at the beginning that they were 16, and then I obviously registered it. We could talk about whether or not he's committed a felony.
I know, that just adds in another level of ick. Literally I wrote down so many parts. I was like, it's what's her name? Bridget and Eric, and his name's Eric. Bridget and Eric. I was like, their dynamic is just.
Oh, it's grim.
But I just remember being that age, watching it as a kid, and thinking he was so hot. Being of course she wants to get with him.
I'm going to pause you because I just want to finish on the Lena thing, but we will get into it because I want to hear everything I have to say because it's going to be so good. Go back to Lena. I wanted to pose to you because I think it's interesting that her rebellion, her coming of age, is her stripping off her clothes and showing her body. What if we'd switched that storyline to Carmen, and her big coming of age moment was that she stripped off into her underwear, and jumped in the sea. How do you think that would play differently to have like a plus size character in that role there?
I think, like, especially just looking at it in the context of 2005, that would not have flown. That would have been more of the, like, I just feel like it would have ended up being a bit rather than being this kind of, like, breakthrough emotional experience like it was for Lena. I feel like if we replaced it with a plus size person in 2005, I feel like it would have been like, this is like, has to be like some kind of funny somehow. Like, how are they making this kind of a joke?
You're so right, because I don't know if this ever crossed the Atlantic Ocean to the States, but have you ever heard of the show The In-Betweeners?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Great. I was not expecting you to say yes. Okay. So there is a film. Have you seen the movie?
I have not.
Okay. It's very British, and I appreciate that the comedy might not transcend, but in the storyline, so the four boys, they've gone to like Malaga or Magaluf, one of these like lads' holiday places, and they've all kind of met a woman, and they're trying to woo and ultimately trying to have sex. And one of the characters, Jay, his designated woman is a bigger gal, maybe like a size 14 US. Yeah. And there's a moment where they're all going to strip off into their underwear and run into the sea together. And she does it because she's really confident. That's like part of her personality. She's like super confident, and she's honestly stunning. And she strips off into her underwear, and he gets really cagey because he's not comfortable seeing a bigger woman in her underwear. And then these like other lads kind of walk behind her and are shouting like things like whale and stuff like that at her, but she doesn't mind because she's like, I'm going to go in the water. But he's the one who cares because other people are judging him for finding that attractive. And so when you were talking there about if we put Carmen into the Lena role for this underwear jumping in the water moment, I think you're right, especially if this is 2005. I think the In-Betweeners movie came out like 2011, 2012. So you're right. They would have 100% used it for laughs. I can imagine now, Carmen like stripping off a underwear and then like maybe like awkwardly falling into the sea, not like an elegant dive.
Yes.
So
no, literally, it's something like just like falls in.
Yeah, falls in like a fool. Because all fat people are clumsy, right? I mean, saying that, Rebecca, right. I am super clumsy. So that trope.
No, same.
That trope works. But it's not all of us. Hashtag not all fat people. But yeah, I think your point stands. I think, unfortunately, the nuance and the kind of romanticism of the moment for Lena wouldn't track if it was a plus-size character in that role.
I agree. And I think that once again, back in like the 2005 context, I don't think the audience would have related as much to it have been Carmen. I don't think it would have gotten as much reception had it have been like a plus size person in like if a plus size person was in Lena's role. I don't think that like you said, that romanticization of like that experience would transfer over for a plus size character. I think a lot of people that are plus size would have seen it and related to it, but I think in like people who wouldn't have been able to.
Yeah, I 100% agree. So let's move to Bridget. So Bridget, Blake Lively, in one of her first roles, it must be.
Yes, this is like pre-nose job.
I know. Literally what I was thinking. I was like, it's subtle, but it's obvious. Yeah, so she is a really interesting character because she's definitely the most confident of the group, but her mother had committed suicide several years before. And again, as a kid, Rebecca, I never clocked that.
I never caught that either as a kid. I did not.
I assume she passed.
Did not catch that until I was watching it this time. I was like, but then like watching it this time, it's so obvious that like that's what happened. Yeah, because like the pastor or whoever that is talking says something like, I don't know how, like, what could bring someone to commit such an act or something. And
like
I was
a mother. Yeah, it's like the victim blaming.
I was like,
oh my gosh. That's shaming.
I know, right? I was like, oh my god. But then it clicked. I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I know. This is a kid's film. I was like, oh my god, this is so heavy.
I know. We're like 1 minute in.
we're just getting to know these gals, and all of a sudden, oh my god! So yeah, you're totally right. It is jarring actually watching it now, and she is going to Mexico to like a football or a soccer summer camp. And we already understand before when I kind of like do a little seance that she's jealous that the others might see boys, but she's going to like an all girls camp, and we understand really quickly that she's definitely the flirtatious one of the group. She likes the boys, and so she gets to summer camp and she clocks, as you point out, Eric, who's one of the coaches, assistant coaches, or whoever. She like lusts after him straight away. Watching this film, Rebecca, I was brought back to like 13-year-old me, who I felt like I always had to be trying to get boys' attention, and I realized it's because of this film. Like, some of the things that Bridget does in this film, I've 100% mimicked. And I think it's really interesting because I personally don't think that's very good representation.
I would agree, because we'll discuss, but there's some different levels of ick, and also different levels of like internalization. Like, is this okay? Like, is this actually okay to do?
And I think you're hitting the nail on the head here, because coming away from it now, I understand what the motivation of the film is trying to say, but it is so subtle and so implicit that 13-year-old Hannah did not pick up on it, and therefore I didn't realize. Oh, anyway, let's just get into it. So yeah, so she starts flirting with Eric. She lies and says that she's 17. Because obviously this guy, I mean, I don't know, I can't put an age on him. You'll be able to help me, because we know he's at uni. We know he's at Columbia. We don't know what year, but I would have guessed maybe 20 or 21. Oh, he's drinking.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. So he has to at least be 20. Well,
Mexico.
If they're in Mexico,
it's 18, right?
That's true.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. So okay.
20 or 21 is what I had pegged for him. 20
or 21. And she goes out of her way to flirt with him. She's trying to impress him on the football pitch, and she's very selfish in that sense. You get the coach say you got to pass the ball. If you've seen Ted Lasso, it's very reminiscent of Ted Lasso. You got to share. You got to be part of the team. And she gets very frustrated because she is the star. She is the star. Even like the little celebrations they do for the goals, it's all about her. They're like paparazzi taking her picture.
Yeah, or they like bow down to her. They're like, we're not worthy.
Oh my god! Yeah, oh my god, it's so cringe. First of all, don't do that. Don't do that to your friends.
Like that.
Don't do that. That's what put them on
a 16-year-old girl does not need this.
The ego, baby. So
I'm like, I get it. Like, Blake Lively is beautiful,
stunning.
She is.
And she's obviously talented. Like, she is obviously the superstar.
I think she did a great job.
Yeah.
In this movie, I thought she did a great job, for sure.
She's fantastic. And the thing is, I think Bridget is my least likable character to me. But I also think she isn't meant to be very likable. Again,
I agree.
Maybe on like a rewatch and being a bit older, I recognize that more. But I remember not liking her as much as the others because I just thought she was so arrogant. Right, but I also wanted to be her. It's that thing like in Mean Girls, like you're meant to hate Regina George, but you also want to be Regina George, and maybe it's the same here with Bridget. Yeah,
no, I agree with that too. I think she was always the character I related to the least, mainly because I never understood the like fascination she had with running. I was always like, what is? Like, she talks about like the runner's high, and I was always like, what? But I remember, like, kind of experiencing the same thing. Like, she does come off as, like, the, like, very arrogant part of, like, the friend group, kind of. And I do think that the reason I would agree in saying that she's probably my, like, least favorite of the four, because, one, she is the one I least connect to, and also just growing up, I had a very different kind of, like, outlook on, like, how to get male attention from boys. Like, it was more so, I feel like I related a little bit more to Lena in a way where I was like, just don't perceive me. I was like, just don't, because I've had those experiences where people like have been like completely just ruthless about like the size of my body and stuff like that. And so it became one of those things where I was just like, all right, we're good. Like, I'm just gonna put a big sheet over myself so that like I can't be seen. And I think seeing someone be so like comfortable in their like sexuality as a teenager, if you can even say that, but like it's just weird because at that time in my life I was not like that at all, and I think that's why I don't really relate to her as much.
Yeah, I totally understand that. I think from my experiences, because even though I've always been a bigger kid, my like boobs, hips, and ass came in like with force. And I think like I had like the biggest boobs like in my year, and that was like really overly sexualized. So I realized again at the age of 13, 14, 15, like that's what I had to offer. Like, and this is like really quite sad looking back on it, but you know, we're children, you know. You know, you kind of take what other people perceive of you as fact, before you, because you haven't developed your own sense of self yet. And I remember thinking like, okay, well that's the thing, like, you know, I've got like boobs and I've got like a nice arse, I'll run with that. So for me, when I was looking at Bridget, I was like, well, this is what I need to be doing. Because like, again, like I've said it on this podcast so many times, Rebecca, I was a horny kid. I was such a horny kid, and I was just like, yeah, I want all the boys all the time, please. So I think I took Bridget to be like, well, that's what I need to do in order to succeed. So like the act of when, you know, she like takes her hair down and whooshes it around, I'm like, I 100% did that at pool parties. You know, she throws water on herself after one of the matches. Okay, I don't think I went that far. I really, really don't think I went that far. But I mean, I cringed for her.
Same.
I was like, it really gives, again, to quote Mean Girls again, it gives baby prostitute. It gives like, you know, she doesn't really know what she's doing. And then, you know, they're talking in like the mess hall, and she overhears Eric saying that they're going to like the cantina on Saturday, which is like the local bar, and she has convinced herself that he has said that loud enough for her to hear, so she needs to act on it. And like her friends, I mean, first of all, they had a hard gig being friends with Bridget, but also they should have tried harder to be like,
they were like,
yeah,
okay,
yeah, they're like, really? Are you sure? I'm like, no, like she's absolutely delusional. And then she goes, and I found this really interesting. You know, she taps on Eric's shoulder. He's surprised to see her, and they dance. But there's another coach at that table having a drink, and he doesn't say anything, Rebecca, which really creeped me out.
No, I thought that exact same thing. He even kind of like smiles, or like kind of like
a bit of a nod.
Yeah, like it's on this. It felt like the subtext was like, oh well, you know, like, I mean, she's cute, you know, like it doesn't matter, like we're like her parents aren't here, like that type of thing. Like it just gave like a really weird like I don't know. It was just, because I was like, why is this dude not being like, she is not of age, and also like, couldn't he have like looked at her form? Yeah. Like, didn't they have to like fill out a form to see what her birth date was?
And also like, you know, position of power. Like, you are her teacher this summer, man. Like, she should be coming to you.
And he says...
Go on.
Oh, sorry, continue. No, I was saying, he says something about, like, when they first... Like, one of the first times that they talk, she's like, what have you heard of me? And, like, he, like, tells her that, like, he's heard that, like, her high school, like, won the soccer championship, or, like, Nash States or something. And I was just thinking, like, how affirming that would feel from, like, an older man as, like, a young girl to hear someone, like, that they know about you. Like, and I can just see that kind of, like, put that in her head that, like, oh, like, he knows, like, he's thinking about me.
He's read up on me. Yeah. He's clocked me before, like, I clocked him. You're totally, that is such a valid point. And, which, again, they do try to portray his character to be pushing back, but he still ultimately
Yes.
dances with her, and then he like gives up and he walks away because he realizes this is icky. And then there's a moment where she meets him at the beach that they keep running at, and she tells him like stuff like that her school counselor said after her mum died, and then they're holding hands or like just like kind of like grazing fingers, and then she goes, I've never told anyone that before. And I literally went, what? Like, oh God, yeah. Bridget, tell your friends that. Don't tell this 21-year-old man that.
Literally, just, you have 3 other friends.
Literally.
The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants.
The Sisterhood. Come on.
I'm like...
Honestly. But then she gets the jeans back, right? She gets the jeans back and she realizes this is the night. And she... Oh my God, she puts this incredibly bright bra and then with a shirt over the top, but it's not fastened, so you can still see the bra. Now all I'm thinking is like, you're 16, you're 16, you're 16. And then she's got the jeans, and then she saunters past his bedroom window, and he just so happens to be up and see her walk by.
Yes. He just like sits up, and I'm like,
have
you just waited?
Just get back down. Lie back down. You saw nothing.
Like you saw, yeah, exactly. You saw nothing. Lay back. Go back to sleep.
Go back to sleep. And then he meets her at the beach, and then like I swear they don't even have any words passed. They just start making out, and then it's insinuated that they've had sex on the beach. And poor Bridget crawls into bed, and she does not look fulfilled. And then we realize over the next, 10 minutes that, she's been wanting to have sex for however long. She wants to fill this hole that she feels inside of her. And this didn't do it. She feels emptier, if anything. She's super depressed. She gets back home. Carmen and Tibby come round. They talk about it. And then the next day, the jeans arrive. They've got the jeans. And Maggie the dog runs away with the jeans. And so, what's her name? Bridget chases after the dog, and so happens to run into Eric, who just happens to be walking around this really nice neighborhood, right?
Literally.
And he's like, oh my God, what he was wearing was so mid-noughties, it made me a bit sick. The shirt! Yes. Why did all boys and men wear those shirts? Was there nothing else to wear?
Know. It is a fashion crime for sure.
Crime. And she's in her like satin jammies.
I know, like just like little like Sophie shorts, and I was like,
babe, I can't. And then he turns out he was stopping by on his way back to Colombia. She goes, this is a long way round, and I was like, cool. And then he's like, oh, I just wanted to like apologize for that night. And she said, I wasn't telling you to slow down. And then he ends this conversation with some of the ickiest words I've ever heard, which was, when you're 20 years old and a superstar, give me a shot. So how old would he be? Like 25, 26?
Yeah.
That's disgusting.
I wrote that down. I literally wrote the when you're 20 line gave me the ick. Because I was like, dude, no. Like, no.
You know what?
That's not the compliment you think it is.
But it's also like, for me, I'm just like, they are trying to apologize for his behavior by calling it like a moment of weakness. And I was like, but he is the adult in this situation. I mean, he's not the biggest adult by any means. He is clearly a university student. He's like 20, 21 years old. But she is literally 16. He has all the power. And he is acting out. And she is also confirming that by being like, she was just so irresistible. He couldn't say no.
Yeah, and in some ways, too, he's like with that position of power, like he's like in a position of authority over her in a way that like is really icky when you bring in that kind of like aspect. It's not like, she's actually 17 and he's like 18. No. It's not like they've been dating like since they were in high school. And it's like you were supposed to be like this person's like instructor or like their like teacher, their caretaker during this time. Like you're not supposed to be like being intimate with your students, basically, which is what they are in that context to him. Like he's like coachees.
I've just realized, is the reason why this storyline is set in Mexico is to avoid the age of consent laws in America?
I had not even thought about that. But
I literally just Googled it. Because I think, like, in the States, it can vary between 16, 17, and 18. But Mexico is complex. It's not clear, like, what they could be. It's legally ambiguous. Literally, Wikipedia says it's legally ambiguous, and that's how they've got around it.
That has to be.
They thought about it. Oh, that's so cringe.
That makes the ick like 10 times worse because they were like, oh, well, we've got to like put her in a different country because, you know, if this happened in the United States, it would be statutory like rape.
Oh, that's foul, isn't it?
I'm like, my mouth just dropped at the like realization of that. Because there is.
I literally, as you were talking, I just suddenly went, hold the phone. Is it that like insidious that they've gone to that level of like thought behind it?
Oh,
grim. So I think like we kind of danced around it a little bit, but like I just want to like make it really clear. My upset and the ickiness around this part of the film is because it really isn't explicit that this is bad.
Right.
And you're encouraged as a young girl to also lust after Eric.
Yes. I think that is very, very, very true. And it's also that kind of like internalization of the message that like younger girls are supposed to like lust after older guys. Mm-hmm. Like we're supposed to want like, she mentioned something too that he's like in a letter, she's like, he's 100% unattainable. And I think that kind of is another aspect into it too, that like that attraction is that she's not supposed to have him. Mm-hmm. And she knows that. Mm-hmm. Like she knows that they're not supposed to be together because she mentions that. Like he's her coach, he's her mm-hmm. like boss technically, I guess, probably. Mm-hmm. But like it's just, now I'm just thinking about like the fact that they had to like definitely go around it. Like the ick is just so. Yeah, because it's like, it is that kind of thing where they, like you said, don't outright be like, they're not outright like, this is not what you're supposed to be doing. No. And like, it's clear that he like feels some type of way about it. Like because he's not like right off being like, okay, let's go off and bang, you know? But like, he's definitely struggling with some type of internalization and then like gives in. And I'm just like, and then it really is, I feel like in the whole movie, you kind of see his struggle with it. Mm-hmm. Like with the fact that she's younger than him and he is attracted to her or whatever. But it is really weird at the end when he brings up that, like, when you're 20 line. And it's like, dude, you were not, like, you were feeling bad because, like, society makes you feel bad about it. Like, you were not actually, like, really feeling some type of way about it.
It's like when, you know, when I don't know if you have heard, I don't know if it's transcended into the States, but like the Russell Brand sexual allegations that have happened over the past few weeks. It's really big news here because he is like relatively famous. I have real issues with him constantly. They keep calling him an A-lister and like he's not a fucking A-lister. Stop talking. Anyway, I have my own thoughts. But one of the allegations was that he was in a relationship with a 16-year-old when he was 30. And you have a lot of the like apologists online saying, well, the age of consent is 16 in the UK, so that's legal. And it's like, if you need a law to tell you the youngest you could go like legally, means that you would go younger if the law wasn't there.
Literally. Yeah. Like that law is there because like 16-year-olds have sex with other 16-year-olds. Literally. Like, this is not giving a 40-year-old permission to date a 16-year-old.
No, not at all. And, I mean, don't get me wrong, like, I'm not saying that 21 is the same as, like, 30, like, you know, having sex with a 16-year-old. Yeah. But, like, there's also, like, it's such an abuse of power. And like you say, that last line he says means that he and the film are like, that was gross. But not gross enough for me to never speak to you again and like just let you live your life. Yeah. I want you to still remember me in 4 years so you can give me another shot. And it's like, dude, that's gross. that is gross, because you find her attractive now, like, and you just think, yeah, like you say, society is like, you shouldn't really go out with a 16-year-old. And it's so disingenuous. Like, his motivation is so disingenuous. And I hate how the film paints as this like cute little like romantic line at the end, like, don't forget about me. And it's not that clean. It's really icky.
Yes, no, it does not hit the way that he thinks it is,
Uh-huh.
or like the way that the writers think that it was hitting, because it is not the compliment that I don't think it's not the compliment that like Bridget needed. I think she needed something else. Like, I think a lot of this also has to do, like, one, with her relationship with her mom and like how like that happened, but also that has a lot to do with her relationship with her dad.
Oh, her
like, she doesn't really. Her relationship with her dad is just kind of like, he just pays for her stuff.
Yeah.
They don't really have that kind of connection, and I think that's the kind of fulfillment she was looking for through this.
Agreed. And actually, now you've said that, I've just realised the dads do not do well in this film. This is like a really anti-dad film.
Yeah, this is not a dad-positive movie.
It's not. It really isn't. These need to just like shape up and like, you know, fucking be adults.
Like, you need to do better.
Just do better. Like, you know, as simple as that. Just be a better person. Like, actually show your emotions. That would be really healthy. Thank you so much. Okay, moving on. I have a couple questions left. So, we've already touched on it, but did you, and when did you cry?
Yes and yes. So yes, I did cry. The first time I actually, when we first started watching it, the first part that got me was that I started like teared up a little bit was when Carmen's dad leaves for the first time, and she's on the phone with Lena.
Oh, there's Lena. Sorry, it's Lena. Yeah, you are right.
I know. I get the young girls confused.
Yeah.
But and that part made me tear up for sure. And same with kind of the, like, just kind of Carmen's whole, like, through line. I kind of, like, get teary-eyed at different parts with her. And then I actually wrote down some of the moment, the moment with Bailey and Tibby. Oh, God. Their storyline, I mean, just rips my heart to shreds.
Absolutely breaks my heart.
As it did when I was 12.
Yeah, I remember having that, you know, that really intense, like, you know, frog in throat when I was young, because I didn't want to cry, but I was just so upset.
Yes. Yeah, and I definitely think that the character of Bailey definitely struck me more this viewing than it did, I think, as a child. I think being younger, like, it just kind of made me sad more than anything. But I think in this viewing, it was really, like, you really understand, like, the kind of wisdom that this child has.
Please, yeah. And, like, the impact she has on others. Yeah. Yeah,
the fact that, like, you know, meeting her, like, for Tibby has definitely, like, changed Tibby's life, for sure.
Yes.
And it's just so, she said something, Bailey says something, I didn't write down the whole line, but, like, her little monologue when she, like, recorded herself for Tibby.
Yes, in the jeans.
She says something like, maybe there's a little bit of loser in all of us. Being happy isn't always, isn't having everything in your life be perfect. And then she talks about how, like, it's stringing along, like, all the little things, like winning a level in Dragon's Lair, or, like, doing stuff like that. And I'm like, how beautiful is it that, like, you get that kind of wisdom from a child, like, very close to, like, very, very much aware that she is, like, going to pass away soon.
Yeah.
And just having that impact, like, on Tibby, like, it just, that was very, I don't know, that was what really hit me too, was that their kind of friendship, just because I love Tibby's character. I think she's so funny, and I think she's very much, I relate to her. I wrote down that I relate to Carmen and Tibby the most. Like, I feel like I'm a combo of the two, and the way that she handles that, like, whole situation with such, like, this kind of, like, sweetness that we don't necessarily see from her, because she's, like, the rebel, she's, like, the tough one, and I think it's a really, I don't know, I really enjoyed that part, like, rewatching it again.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I know we haven't spoken a lot about Tibby, because I guess from the scope of the podcast, but I think it's a really good storyline, actually. I think when I was younger, I didn't like it as much because it's not away. It's not like they've gone to Greece or Mexico, something exciting, and it's not about romance.
Right.
It's something a lot more softer. But this time through, I actually really appreciated the kind of like mumblecore of it. Like, they're doing this documentary at the Wallmans, and it's very Clerks. It's very Good Girl. It's just something so sweet and innocent about it. And this little girl just wants to live as much of a life as possible before she goes. And I think it's really telling that she doesn't tell Tibby what is going on, and she finds out on her own. And I think as well, from Amber Tamblyn, her performance is so quiet and subtle. If you compare her to America Ferrera, who I'm not taking away, like, it's just very different, but she is crying and shouting, and she's so headstrong and stubborn, where Amber's performance is so insular, and she just goes so quiet and into herself. And I think it was just such a good direction for that character. And oh god, I'm gonna cry. The scene where like she's up waiting for the phone call, and you just hear the mum answer and say, "I'll let her know," and she knows what that is, breaks my heart. And again, like, it's just a sappy little film, but that moment, even all these years later, really does get to me. And I love the Tibby, and I love even like when they're in the car going to the wedding, and like, oh, like, how's your like succumentary coming along, like, what are you going to call it? And she just goes, Bailey. And I'm just like, oh no.
It's like, cue the sobbing. I'm
literally, it's just so emotional. So yeah, I do love the Tibby storyline. I think it's so well executed.
Agreed.
And then I cry at the Carmen one all the way through. I think it's so emotional. I think Carmen is probably my favorite character. I probably am also a mix of Carmen and Tibby. Like, I can be really stubborn like Carmen, and I really relate to like her anger as well. But I think Tibby's rebellion and kind of like just wanting to be her own island is something I can relate to as well.
Same.
I also cried at Lena. So I cried when she asks her papu for her shot, and then when she says to Costas that she loves him, it really got to me. And I was like, oh, Lena, like, what, like, we've got like no summer romance. It was just so nice. The only one I didn't cry at was Bridget, because I'm more angry at the end of that story than sad. I'm furious. I'm like, oh, that was gross.
Yes. Yeah, agreed. There was one little moment between Lena's grandparents that like, you know what I'm talking about, where they're like hanging stuff. She's like hanging like squid or something, and he's like doing stuff with like green beans, and he just like rubs her Yaya's back and then just like kisses her shoulder. And I was like, that is just, and like Lena's just watching that and like just seeing how like pure that is, like how, and I like, it's giving me like goosebumps talking about it, because I'm just like, this is so, like, it's just so sweet, and it was just such a cute little moment to include in the film. Like, they didn't need to have that there, but like it was so cute, and so like I feel so important to Lena to see that, because I think it gave her that kind of encouragement to be like, I could have that too, like, this isn't unattainable for me.
100%. She needed to see it. Again, representation matters. She needed to see it. Okay. Is there anything else that you wanted to bring up with Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants?
Yes, actually.
Oh, please.
Not really necessary the storyline, but I just wanted to just take a moment to talk about how like 2000s like coming of age movies like this had the best soundtracks.
Oh my god. I lost my shit when I heard Natasha Bedingfield. I was so excited when she's running on the beach, and I think it's Unwritten, and I was just like, oh my god, I love this album so much. Oh, yes, 100% agree.
I wrote down, I was like, songs in 2000s movies truly were bangers. I was like, they really just like knew how to create, because that was back when like, I know they do it now, but they created like actual like CD albums of like soundtracks.
Yeah.
And I was obsessed with that kind of stuff. But I remember like just thinking about like, oh, I bet this soundtrack was awesome. Like, this CD was awesome.
Yeah, it was.
That was probably my last thing.
No, it's a fantastic point to make. You're absolutely right. And also, like, pop music in the noughties was just next level. It was next level.
It really was.
We took it for granted.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so Rebecca, at the end of a Facts on Film episode, we like to rate our films based on how well we believe they represent fat bodies. And we like to rate them out of ourselves. So out of the 5 potential Rebeccas, what would you give The Sisterhood of the Travelling Pants for fat representation?
I'd say for fat representation, for Rebecca, I would give it like a 3.5 Rebeccas.
Okay, would you like to explain your rating?
Yes. So this movie definitely, I wrote down early when I was taking my notes as I was watching it, I was like, this movie didn't necessarily make me feel better about being fat, but it definitely made me feel seen as like a person in a bigger body. And I think the impact that Carmen's character had on me as a person was very like formidable, in the fact that like I still think about her character. Like, I mean, I played tennis because Carmen played tennis.
Yeah.
Carmen's room was bright pink as like her room growing up was bright pink. My room was hot pink growing up.
Love.
And just like I just felt very connected to that character, and it made me feel seen as a person that is not, nor has ever been, like a size 2 or a 0. And it was very interesting, but then I also think it still, like I said, didn't make me feel better about being fat. So I was like torn between like the 3 and the 4, like 3.5, somewhere there. Just because, like we were talking about earlier too, like we do see her like being active, like being sporty, being doing all of this stuff, and we see her standing up for herself.
Yes.
Towards those like people who like at the bridal shop and stuff like that. But then it's also like a little bit of the like ick is that like, why was this a part of the conversation anyway, you know?
Thank you for that. I think if before I spoke to you about this, I would have given it a 1. Because Hannah, just because Carmen isn't fat. But speaking to you and hearing, you know, your experiences, and also just kind of like delving into it on a level that I haven't been able to before, because how often do we get to have these conversations? I am going to bump that up to about a 2.5. I think you're right. Even though I stand by the fact that America Ferrera is not a fat person, but her character is meant to be, and how she is portrayed is, I think, on the whole, relatively positive. Like you say, she's active, she is, you know, smart, she's well spoken, she's confident, she's, you know, stubborn to a certain degree, and I mean that in a positive way. You know, she has got very, very good qualities, and I really love her standing up for herself in the bridal shop scene, because she's telling them what time it is. I also really appreciate that she doesn't try to make herself smaller. You know?
Yes.
As much as she talks disparagingly about herself, that is actually only for the like first 15 minutes, and it doesn't really rear its head again, that negative self-talk she was doing. It's other people who make it an issue, and she then defends herself. And that's really positive. And yeah, like I think it's really important that she doesn't, you know, try to like slim down. Like, I mean, you know, pull a film off the shelf and you're going to have a fat character in there who's trying to lose weight. You know, that is such a common storyline for bigger characters. And I'm really appreciating this one that is not part of her story. And I also even really like the fact that, I mean, I know it's part of the magic of the jeans, but the fact that the jeans do fit, and they don't fit in like, you know, in a horrible way, that they actually fit perfectly, and she does look good in them. Again, there are films where they try to tell us this looks good for this plus size person, but it actually doesn't. You just know it would look good on a thin person, and that's what they're trying to get at. I actually appreciate, like, her fashion is cool, the tennis outfit's good, you know, the wardrobe department did the work. They make her look really good. So yeah,
like she doesn't look like she doesn't belong with like the friend group. Like she doesn't look like frumpy or like wearing like, she's not wearing khakis. Like she's like, she looks good.
She does exactly that. She actually looks part of this friendship group. So I think I came into this fully ready to go. I think it's a 1, and I'm coming away going, I actually think it's a 2.5 Annas. So there you go. Power of conversation.
The sisterhood.
The Sisterhood. Thank you so much, Rebecca, for joining on this podcast. It's been an absolute blast getting to talk to you about this. I really enjoyed this film. I really enjoyed it. It's problematic.
It's problematic. It's problematic. It gave me a little bit of the ick, but I had fun I had fun going through it.
I really, really did. I had a really good time watching it, and I didn't expect to like it as much as I did on this rewatch, but I really do. And I think I'm going to have to watch the sequel because I want to know what happens.
No, you have to watch the sequel. I believe that there's like 4 or 5 books, but I only think there's the 2 movies. But the sequel is good too. It's different. I'd be curious to see what you think about the sequel.
Okay. Maybe we get a little bonus episode about the sequel.
Yes.
I will message you and let you know my thoughts. It's been so good speaking to you, Rebecca. I really, really enjoyed it. Can you please let me and the listeners know where they can find more of you and your work?
Yes. First, I want to say this has been so much fun. You are so fun to talk to, and
thank you.
I love having these conversations, and I think that they're so important. I love your podcast and all that you do.
Oh, thank you.
A way to find me is I am on Instagram and TikTok as at recoveryrebecca, and I also I have my like email and stuff like that for like business and stuff, but that you can find that on my Instagram as well.
Perfect. Well, the links to your socials will be in the show notes below, and the listeners can find the podcast at Fats on Film on Instagram and Twitter, and myself at Queen Bee Says on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Thank you so much for listening, everyone, and we'll see you at the next one. And remember to stay fat.